been one of those times where bad things come in threes more often than not. And like I said, we saw early on, in this past week, we saw the death of Arlene Sorkin, the voice of Harley Quinn. Saw the tragic passing of the professional wrestler Bray Wyatt. And then, of course, there is the one that probably everyone is mostly well aware of recently, and that is where James Faraci is joining us once again.
Glad to be on.
To talk about the passing of the game show legend that was Bob Barker.
More of an icon than a legend. So
well, one or the other, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you this much. I mean, I've made a lot of jokes about how I am more or less the old guy when it comes to the internet entertainment community and whatever you want to call us that. But here's just one example of why I could give you this. I may be one of the few people online that could tell you I was watching The Price is Right back when Bob Barker still had dark hair.
He had dark hair when I was a kid.
Uh-huh.
But it didn't last till about, I think, 87 or 88 when he swore off his hair dye. I was a kid when I saw his show on summer days and days when I had off from school. So there's that.
Well, yeah, like that. There's when you look at game shows over the years, there probably is more or less the trinity that is Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, and The Price is Right. And
Absolutely.
Now you look at it right now, of the people who are most notably associated with those shows, 2 of them are now no longer with us, and the third has essentially announced his retirement. So
yeah, and that third person is giving his job to Ryan Seacrest.
This might be going off topic because I'm not gonna overly judge Ryan Seacrest off the bat. That not saying he can't do a great job as it is, because we saw.
I'm not saying that either. But
we saw Bob Barker replaced with Drew Carey, and he's done a pretty fabulous job there. But yes, I am one of those persons who does think that Vanna White should have been seriously more considered about stepping in and taking Pat Sajak's place there. That's my take on it.
I agree.
But I will want to say this about I do kind of while I am sad, I do hesitate to call Bob Barker's passing a tragedy, because I kind of compare. The more I think about it, I think about what I thought about when, of course, the legendary actor Christopher Lee passed away some years ago, and just the fact that these are 2 people who lived into their late 90s in one way or another. However you put about it, that's a pretty successable life that way, one way or the other.
I mean, Betty White lasted till she was 99. So
absolutely. And it's interesting that you bring up Betty White, because she was connected to another show that I can't help but think about in one way. Of course, one thing that the internet has been rife with ever since the announcement of Bob Barker was made was everyone's making the joke about how, well, he made it close to $1 without going over, so that's pretty much should be expected. And and you know what? The fact that gets a chuckle out of you. That's why I keep thinking about hearing that thing, and you wonder if that's appropriate or not. But then I think about when I hear that is that one episode, one of the most famous episodes of the Mary Tyler Moore Show, Chuckles Bites the Dust.
Oh yeah.
And that whole episode was about how somehow we need levity and some type of laughter to deal with the realities of everyone's and our own mortality. It's how we ourselves keep getting on in life. And maybe the fact that when you look at someone like Bob Barker, who much like Chuckles the Clown, even though the latter was fictitious, but you really believe that Barker was somebody who live to entertain others and make
Yeah.
people happy. Like a lot of us those of us who just make these silly little internet shows do. So if I guess part of me would think that if some of us could find some type of laughter and just being thankful that we got to see and know someone like Bob Barker for so many years.
Yeah.
Yeah, part of me thinks
And
that's the way he would have wanted it.
yeah. Do you want to know something really
Okay.
weird?
Uh-huh.
I know this sounds kind of unique in this sort of context,
Uh-huh.
but every time I'd watch Bob Barker in the late 80s, early 90s, there was this show called Family Feud. I had never heard of Richard Dawson. I had not seen the ABC version. I had seen the CBS version that had Ray Combs hosted first, and I thought, wow, this guy A is funny. These families that have to answer these questions, ooh, some of these answers. And Ray's just taking it all in stride. I had no idea about Richard Dawson at that point in time. So in '94, when they brought the show back and Ray Combs wasn't on, when I saw Richard Dawson as the host, my initial reaction was, why in the hell is the grandfather from Charles in Charge hosting Ray Combs' show? Yeah, again, I had never heard of Richard Dawson, never heard of Hogan's Heroes at that point in my life.
So yeah.
But it was like, I don't want this. I want Ray Combs, not the grandpa from Charles in Charge. But I know different actor than Richard Dawson was. Richard Dawson was also in The Running Man as guess what? A game show host.
Yeah, well, just think about it this way. Like, you think you were surprised to see Richard Dawson after seeing it with your guys on. Think about any people today who probably, grew up with Steve Harvey.
Oh, I actually love how Steve Harvey's just handles these questions. It's like how I would handle them. Like, are you seriously saying that? I mean, no offense to the late Louis Anderson or to Richard Karn and to John O'Hurley, who did before Steve Harvey took over the job. They did great. They were funny, but Steve Harvey, if you ever get a chance to see his reaction to the words naked grandma or what Santa would do to the reindeer after he retired, or I would blank for sex and hear these guys talk, it'd be like, yeah, I'd say the same thing. I'd react the same way.
And that is the kind of interesting thing. Like, there are so many other game shows out there, like Family Feud, Hollywood Squares, $10,000 Pyramid, or whatever that's called. Those shows basically became known just maybe for just the setting itself, but they always had so many of those shows had many different hosts throughout the years, and that's why more or less, I guess, hold up those other three as more or less the Trinity, because, let's face it, Jeopardy, at least for the time being, is always going to be most probably remembered for Alex Trebek. Wheel of Fortune, even though it was preceded by Chuck Woolery, is always going to be mostly known for Pat Sajak. And The Price is Right, even now, as we've gone through, I think, close to a decade of Drew Carey doing the show, it's always good. Many people are always going to first and foremost associate The Price is Right with Bob Barker.
Oh, interesting fact about The Price is Right. When it came to CBS in the 70s, it was actually a restart of an older version of the show. So there was another host before Bob Barker.
Well, that's why. Yeah, I think that's why it was always called like. You'll remember if you watched it the older days. In the first many years of Barker's time, it was always specifically called the Fabulous 60-Minute Price is Right, because the previous iteration. That's probably not a word. Yeah, I'm acting. Iteration was only a half hour in length. So yeah,
and I think some of the early Barker episodes were 30 minutes in length as well. Before there was something in the early 80s.
There were. I do remember there were every so often a handful of episodes that only went half an hour, usually because CBS had to add something in the, I guess it would be the 11:30 Eastern time slot for one reason or another. But of course, they also had a number of. I remember back when the show had occasionally had the occasional prime time special on.
Oh, I love the prime time special. And there was a primetime syndicated version, I recall, and there were different hosts. And do you want to know something about that?
Okay.
I was like, I didn't even know they existed. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
They were half hour long. They didn't syndicate it in my neck of the woods, probably because we had the CBS long time show like this. I mean, it's bulletproof at this point.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and well, the good thing is this: like, this happened. This was going on even long before or this week. Of course, all of the old Bob Barker Price is Right episodes are easily available to watch through. They have their own channel on Pluto TV. You can basically they regularly watch they just regularly run them in a circuit more or less. You can just click on and you can tune on just about any episode. It'll be on at any particular given time.
You might not believe this, but right now I am watching it on Pluto right now as we speak.
And that's what I say. Stuff like that. That's in a way like that is how, in a way, people like Bob Barker will never be forever gone or forgotten. We're always going to remember them through the many ways that people like himself and so many other hosts and entertainers try to make people happy in that way forever. And so just for that, I am one of those people who I guess I just think of that one line. Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened.
Absolutely. And to salute Mr. Barker, everyone out there who watched this, make sure you control the pet population, have your pets spayed or neutered.
Absolutely.